Hey there, it's Steve from Serious Keto, and this is the Not So Serious Keto interview series where my guests today are David and Jose from Chipmonk Baking. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hey,
Hey,
Steve.
Steve.
Now, I want to get a little bit of housekeeping out of the way before we start. First off, you guys are the first and may be the only ever keto product manufacturer that I have on. Because I don't want people thinking that I'm pimping for some brand or another. So Perfect Keto, they'll never be on here.
Dang.
Kiss My Keto, any of those guys. But the reason I wanted the two of you on here is I feel that we both kind of became startups around the same time. We went through a lot of the same growing pains. And especially, I love the story of how you guys founded Chipmonk, how things got going, especially with your background, Jose. So I'd like to start there. Life is going fine, you're feeling great, and then all of a sudden things change. Tell me what happened.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even say that like everything was fine and then it changed. It was like a progressive like undoing of my health where I mean, I was personal training, I was eating really well, I was coaching people to like live their best life, move well, and then I just started noticing things like I was fluctuating in energy based off my food choices. So I would get these like crazy peaks of energy, and then hours later I couldn't even keep my eyes open.
Mm.
And so I started drinking more coffee, and before I knew it, I was drinking like 6 cups a day. And granted, it was free at the gym I was at, so it wasn't really like that big of a deal. But I realized that something was definitely wrong, and I joked around with my friends and partner at the time. I was like, I think I have diabetes. They're like, no, you don't. You're too fit. And I was like, yeah, maybe. But I kind of like already knew in the back of my
I
mind.
should have chuckled when you said I might have diabetes. That wasn't nice.
No, I would laugh at it. And then one day I was driving home. Granted, I was completely sober. It was just later in the day. It was a really cold day in Houston. Yeah, believe it or not. And I had the heater on, and it like put me to sleep. I just fell asleep driving, and I hit the rail, and I woke up, and I was like on a bridge. Luckily, I just like hit the rail and like bounced off. I could
All right, we
completely
just
gone over.
hang on for a second. We just froze for a second there. Um, so back up. You're driving. You had the heater on, and then what happened?
Yeah, so I hit this rail, and it like jolted me awake for a bit, and I still kept like drowsing off, and I was like, what is happening? So I like rolled down the windows, and like I got home, talked to my parents about it, and they were like, you need to go to the hospital or like at least go to the clinic and get checked out. So I was like, yeah, I'll make an appointment. So I went, I made an appointment, got a like full physical done, and like a few days later my doctor calls me and he's like, hey, like good news and bad news. And I was like, okay. He's like, good news, you're in great health. And I was like, wow, that's fantastic news. And he's like, the bad news is you have type 2 diabetes, and I'm going to prescribe you metformin. And I was like, you know what? I don't need it, but thank you for letting me know what was wrong. And I was like, I'll come back in 3 months and we'll do my blood sugar again. And
So what was your A1C at
it
that
was
point?
6.9. So it wasn't outrageous. I mean, 6.5 is that like diabetes threshold.
Mhm.
5.7 is that like pre-diabetes threshold. So I was like well into the diabetes numbers, but it wasn't as high as like some of the scary ones you hear about. So I immediately went from eating just regular food, lots of carbs, lots of sugars. I love dessert, right? To and drinking beer, and I just cut out all those things overnight. No beer, no carbs, nothing processed, nothing sweetened. And so I went on a like kind of a strict keto diet. I was having berry shakes in the morning with like protein and peanut butter. So I wasn't like super keto, but I was definitely like within 70 grams of carbs a day. And I started fasting almost immediately. I did a 16/8 fast, and I would like snack on nuts all day, nuts and seeds, eat like a salad with meat for dinner, just really clean stuff. And I started feeling really good after about a week and a half. Started leaning out even more, which was crazy. So that was just a perk. And then 2.5 months later, I feel the best I've ever felt in my 20s. And then I go get my blood sugar done, and the doctor was like, uh, what? He's like, I think we screwed up the first test or someone screwed up the second test. And I was like, why do you say that? And he's like, well, your A1C is 5.3, which means like you're totally normal. So we did it again because he couldn't believe it. So we tested it again, came back the same. And he was like, wow, like nobody does this. You're like, what did you do? And I was like, oh, it's simple. You know, I just changed everything about the way I eat. Anybody can do it.
Yeah.
And so he like dubbed me the poster boy for diabetes. And that was about 6 years ago. Yeah.
So, well, first, I love the story because I get that story from viewers on a regular basis, oftentimes with much bigger numbers than what you had. But it's such a great testament to the fact that food is medicine and food is poison.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, before you discovered that you had diabetes, were you a baker as well? Were you a foodie, or
I mean, I could say I was a binge snacker. I liked snacks. I liked sugar. I liked desserts. But I really didn't make food for myself. I just didn't really have time. So I bought a lot of Chipotle, ate a lot of Potbelly, just sandwiches, lots of carby, like processed carb meals. But when I did make things for myself, it would be like a big steak and some veggies. So I wasn't eating terribly. I just I wasn't eating non-processed foods, which was my issue. Plus, genetics plays a little factor into that. So Hispanic background, so there's a little bit of predisposition towards diabetes. So even a little sugar can go a long way. So yeah.
So at what point did you realize, okay, I'm missing sweets. I got to get back to some of the stuff I love?
Immediately. Within like that first month, I literally just went cold turkey. No sweets, no alcohol, no beer. And I would like find myself around it all the time. And it was really, really hard for me to like have the willpower to say no constantly. And there were times where I would just break and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to eat that like piece of cake. And then I would feel awful. Like the sugar rebound was like a hangover.
Yeah.
And so it got to the point where like I was so sensitive to sugar again that even a little bit of sugar would like throw me off entirely. So I started buying like sugar-free things and trying to find like better for you items already made at stores. And all of them were like cardboard. I just didn't enjoy them. The things I wanted to eat, I couldn't have. And the things I could eat, I didn't want to eat. So, I was just perpetually stuck.
Now, at the time, were you and David roommates?
I think we became roommates like 2018. So it was like 2 or 3 years into like my diabetes journey.
So he didn't get to witness all of this. He kind of came in after the fact.
Like a little sugar gremlin the whole time.
So what drove you then to move from buying these potentially keto or low carb options, and then you started baking? Was it just the fact that they don't taste all that great, or what?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, it had been years since I had like pancakes and desserts, and for a long time, I wasn't missing it because I was overcoming it with like different hobbies and like eating better foods. But at a certain point in time, you just want to eat pancakes, or you want to have some bread, or you want to have a cookie. And David and I were at a co-working space. And so we saw all these entrepreneurs around us starting their companies, launching their products. And we were like, man, like we can do that. Like, let's find some ideas. And so we started brainstorming. And I think I had this like idea to do like custom vitamins. I was like based off like lifestyle choices and like your food preferences. Like there's probably something you're going to be deficient in. And so we were like kind of running with it. And David did like a quick Google search and it was like, oh yeah, there's like 3 companies that do this already. So that was kind of depressing. So that actually like spurred me to want to eat dessert. And I was like, man, I thought I had it. And then it made me a little sad. So we had gone to HEB for grocery shopping. And I was like, you know what? Like, I'm going to go into the bakery aisle and I'm going to find ingredients to make pancakes. I'm going to make some muffins, maybe some cookies. So I started looking around and the only real options were like almond flour. So I was like, I'll have that because I can't have regular flour. And the sugar at the HEB was Lakanto. Yeah, so it's a erythritol monk fruit blend,
Okay.
which is like 99.5% erythritol. So I got that,
Yeah,
and then
but
I got
the big words, it says monk fruit like this big on the package, and then like this big is
yeah. But if you look at the ingredients, it's like erythritol comes first, right? Because monk fruit is just too sweet. So I went home and I started putting things together. I was like, let's start with some pancakes. So I made some pancakes, and they were kind of dry. And then I made some muffins, and yeah, they weren't great either. But the cookies were pretty good. They tasted about as close to a regular cookie as I could remember. And then David tried them, and he didn't hate them either. So we were like, whoa, like that's cool. Like this is something that I had to make, and so maybe other people want to try it too. So we started sampling it out the next day, and it just like that, like a week or two later, we had a name. We filed our company, and then we hit the ground running.
So as all this started up, and David, you were one of the taste testers. Were you keto at the time, and are you keto now?
No, I've actually never been keto. I think the most restrictive thing I've ever done with my diet is like calorie counting to help lose weight. But I've never been like overweight. I've generally just been more health conscious. Basically, since I got out of college, and I was like, I got to take care of my body. But yeah, when I tried the cookies from Jose, to me it was like kind of 90% of the way to a real cookie. And just knowing that Jose's story with diabetes, I did like a quick Google search, and it was like 1 in 3 people in the United States are either diabetic or pre-diabetic.
Mm-hmm.
And I had never been to the grocery store and seen like a cookie, that tasted like that. Most of the stuff, had all kinds of like weird, crappy ingredients in it, or it just tasted like Jose said, like cardboard. And it seemed like a good idea. And we were in that co-working space. So again, we were surrounded by all these entrepreneurs. And I think that was a great like launch pad for us, because we literally went to the lunchroom, set up a little table, and just tried selling the cookies and seeing what happened. And I think enough folks, because they were kind of that entrepreneur mindset, came and tried and went a little out of their comfort zone, and that gave us some push to keep going. And eventually it rolled into farmers markets, and then enough success there led to the website. It was kind of just a really good like bunch of stuff coming together at the right time.
So what was your first minimally viable product?
Oh man, it was a chocolate chip cookie. Yeah. And so we brought some to the office, like for people to try. And I didn't even tell them it was like sugar free or anything like that. I was like, hey, do you have a nut allergy? And they're like, no. And I was like, okay, like, try this cookie. And they tried it, and they're like, oh yeah, it's like tastes like a cookie. It's just a little like grainier. And I was like, okay. And I was like, would you like eat that? And they're like, yeah, I would eat this. And I was like, it's sugar free, it's gluten free, it's low in carbs. When I started saying things like that, people like looked at me kind of in horror, just like, why did I eat that? And it's like, hey, you just said you liked it, right? So it's a perception that people have. Like, people think that healthy food is nasty and it's going to taste bad, but that doesn't always have to be the case. So that's kind of how we started. And then once people found out that they were sugar free and grain free and all the things, they were a little bit more hesitant to want to try it. But the people that started buying it really enjoyed it. So we knew there was definitely something there.
Yeah.
Well, I remember when you first shipped me some cookies to try out, and I had your peanut butter cookie, and I declared that the best peanut butter cookie I've ever had, full stop. Not the best keto cookie or gluten-free cookie. It was the best peanut butter cookie I've ever had. So I think that's a testament to the job that you've done. What's your favorite flavors, that each of you?
Ooh, yeah. There's so many of them. We do small batches of unique flavors, and I think some of those have been some of my favorites. Yeah. The white chocolate raspberry is like top notch for me. But out of our core flavors, the Cinnabon, the Keto Bite that we make, the Cinnabon's white chocolate cinnamon, is just incredible. It's like my go-to breakfast snack now.
You may need to send me some more of those then.
Yeah, you got it.
For me, it's probably the white chocolate macadamia cookie, and then I like the birthday cake bites a lot. But it's really just depends on my mood. Like, am I in a coconut mood or a lemon mood? Our protein cookies are actually really good too. I enjoy those. One thing, just going back to our formulas and our recipes, we actually had to work with like a food scientist here locally to get to the chipmunk cookie as you first tried it. Because originally we used Lakanto, that erythritol monk fruit mix, and we also didn't know about things like emulsifiers. So our original cookies were very like oily and buttery and
crunchy.
Yeah. We met with like an executive chef at some hotel, and he basically was like, "This is way too oily, and I don't like erythritol. You need to change this, and then I'll buy thousands of cookies," which he never did. But it did force us to go back to the drawing board. And Jose and I, we did some experimentation, but we're not trained bakers, and I think we very quickly realized we need somebody who has like gone through this process in almost like a scientific way. And so we reached out to the entire faculty of the University of Houston's hospitality program. And one guy just happened to have a background in food science, food safety, and commercial baking. His brother actually had like a brownie bakery. And so we met with him, and he kind of taught us all the basics of like baking science, explaining
formulas and like the ratios.
Explaining like what these types of ingredients, like why you even put them in there in the first place, how to create like a batch sheet, so you're not just making 10 cookies at a time, but you can make 1,000 cookies. And he helped us convert the formula, where now we switched over to allulose, which we find to be a much better sweetener, and create like the chipmunk cookie as you know it today. Funny story with the allulose, like when we first put it in, we were like, oh, we can just do a 1-to-1 swap with the erythritol. And we put it in, and the cookies came out like big fat pancakes, because the allulose, it absorbs so much more moisture, so they're just like flopping around, and we had no idea what to do.
We took the water down for one of the trials, and the cookie came out looking fine. We were like, oh great, and I picked it up, and it literally flopped over like this. It was just so like weak.
Yeah.
So we had to add a lot of fiber and a lot of like binding agents, natural binding agents like konjac root to keep it together. And in turn, it also gave it like a better taste. It gave it more fiber, which is heart healthy. So we added more plants to our product, and it turned out pretty awesome.
One of the things that I talk about when I have other bakers, and all the bakers that I've had so far on this have been YouTube content creators, is my theory that having baking experience and then going into keto baking is more of a handicap than it is a help, just for the reasons that you guys described. If you're working with a new ingredient like allulose and you've never baked, you don't have any expectations about how it's going to turn out. So did you find then that you got to have a lot more sort of fun experimenting rather than frustrating experimenting as you were working on recipes?
Well, once we found like that formula for the base of our cookies, then it was really fun. It was like, oh, let's make this flavor, like let's make that flavor. And then we made like 15 flavors at the onset. We had like a chocolate orange and all these other matcha. Ooh. We had all these flavors, and we had our base, and that's kind of the same base we use now for most of our flavors. So now it's easy because we have that, and we've learned how to modify that base cookie recipe to be a muffin or to make it more cake-like. So we can take the current recipe and make it into other cool things.
So when we were talking about favorite flavors, as you're aware, the favorite flavor in the Serious Keto household is the peanut butter chocolate, or chocolate peanut butter.
Mm-hmm.
My grandson, basically when I need him to do something like finish what's on his plate, that's the bribery right there.
That's awesome.
I'm like, you can have a chipmunk cookie. And even though his mom is a dietitian, which means the moment you say keto, she's like, it's horrible for you. She looks at your ingredients and she's like, oh, this is fine. So the peanut butter chocolate, and then the shamrock shake you talked about doing small batches. That one also quite the hit with my grandson. What is the worst flavor that you feel you've made?
The pizza. The
Oh
pizza.
yeah, I forgot about that.
So we have a line of biscuit bites that we do for our small batch sometimes. So we wanted to create like a savory version of our bites. And the very first iteration of that, we did it on our own. We didn't involve our food scientist advisor, mistake. And we made like a pizza flavored bite, and it was like really wet, and it was just gross.
The seasoning we used was like pizza seasoning.
Yeah,
so
there
was
tomato powder.
There's tomato powder and like all these different spices. And so the spice was right, but the texture and like
it's like a pizza sponge.
Yeah, it was just gross.
That was probably
out of our cookies though. I think there was one time, now that I look back on it, we were trying to make a strawberry flavor, but we were really trying to make sunflower seed flour work as our main flour for the entire line of the keto bites. So right now, only 4 of our keto bites are sunflower seed flour. The rest are almond flour. And so we came to find out that certain combinations of flavors just don't work with sunflower seed flour because it's very nutty. So it has these notes that you just can't mask. And I was like, let's make a strawberry like shortcake flavor. And so we added like strawberry extract and white chocolates, and we tried it, and David immediately hated it. And I was just so confused by what I was tasting. And I was like, I can't tell if I like this or if I really dislike this. But that was, looking back, it was pretty nasty actually. It was like a nutty strawberry, and it sounds good, but it wasn't.
Yeah. How long are you generally willing to work on a flavor that's not coming together before you just say, enough, it's time to move on?
I don't think that's happened. We generally like figure it out. Like we've learned how to modify the flavors we add. Sometimes we'll have to bring in like powdered of that flavor, like powdered raspberry or powdered blueberry to really enhance the flavor. I think at this point, like we've gotten to a place where we can make just about any flavor we choose to make. We made a tiramisu, we made a baklava flavor. So I think like outside of that, like what could possibly stump us at this point? I mean, if you're welcome to throw out some flavors.
We try to do, so now like our small batch kind of schedule, we try to do 2 a month. So we're kind of developing these very quickly. And then each time we develop it, we kind of have a bank that we can go back to as well. But it's like usually we'll give it 2 or 3 tries with our base recipe. And then if that doesn't work, if we think there's legs to it or there's more like research involved, we'll ask our food scientist advisor. Like a good example is icing. We really want to come up with some sort of like keto icing that you could put like on our cookies, or even do like a cookie sandwich. But that's pretty technical to find something that's like shelf stable, heat resistant, you can ship it, and it's like got good ingredients and good macros. So we made a couple things, but that's something that we took off our plate and was like, hey, let's see if we can outsource it. But to Jose's point, it's like once we can get a good base formula for something like that, then it's very easy to swap out like flavors, inclusions, spices, and you can do like 1,000 different variants with it.
I feel almost like you're looking at my notes to see what the next question is, because we keep kind of answering the things that I'm getting ready to have. And one of those was going to be on ingredients, and the fact that you do have such a clean product compared to reading the ingredients lists on other keto, especially cookies. What are some of the challenges in dealing with making things shelf stable and packaging and such like, and still staying clean?
The limit to available suppliers, I think, is like the biggest challenge. We have one supplier for white chocolate chips, and we haven't been able to find anybody else that makes clean white chocolate chips. So if anything happens to them, there goes like half our flavors.
Our white chocolate flavors.
Our dark chocolate chips, same thing. There's only like one company making those allulose-based chocolate chips. So that's been really challenging. Another thing I would say is probably just as difficult is finding ingredients that will A, taste good, and then B, meet the criteria that we're choosing to set out for our brand. Clean, non-processed, won't affect the body, which, it can be very difficult.
I'd say like generally, and this ties to the limited number of suppliers too, is the costs are just like astronomical. Almond flour versus regular flour, allulose versus sugar. They're not just way higher, but they're also incredibly volatile to what Jose was saying. Like if there's only one or two suppliers in the whole world, it only takes one little factory shut down for a week for you to see your prices triple on something. We had something like that happen last year with allulose, where there was only one U.S. domestic manufacturer of crystalline allulose, and they pretty much like shut down, and they're like, hey, we don't have this available, and we don't know when we will. And the only other option is to import it from like Korea or China, which that in the middle of the pandemic, you're talking about like a 6-month lead time. So we were literally having to buy crystalline allulose from like other keto brands in their branded bags, like a pound or two at a time, just to keep the cookies flowing. And there goes like all your margins, because that one ingredient spikes in cost. It's really tough. I think that's my theory as to why there hasn't ever been a very clean, healthy food company at the like $10 billion scale. It's just, I don't know if there is actually enough of those ingredients in the world to supply them consistently. Something like allulose, if there's only one supplier, like how could you possibly try to supply the entire United States with a product until that supply chain is established? So I think it's going to change clearly, because there's a lot of business and money there, and there's a huge interest, and that's where health trends are going. But I think that's kind of why you haven't seen a company like that emerge yet.
To your other point, though, on like shelf stable, there's ways to make food shelf stable. Usually it's some sort of combination of fat and sugar, but because we don't use a sugar, allulose is a sugar, but it's not like a traditional sugar. We've had to figure out how to make our product shelf stable by limiting water content. So that limits mold. So that's the number one factor, like making sure they're not too wet of a product. And then number two, the issue that we have, because we use almond flour as rancidity, so the product would go bad and rancid over time. The way we've overcome that is by gas flushing our products with nitrogen gas. You displace the oxygen in the pouch. You basically make it so no bacteria can grow, and there's nothing to oxidize the nuts. And so it's all natural, like no preservatives. And that's kind of the way we like it.
Jose just giving our trade secrets away here.
It's pretty standard. It's what happens with like potato chips, right? Like they gas flush it. That's why your bag of potato chips is so like puffy, and you think there's a lot in there, but there's really not. It's some combination of like carbon dioxide and nitrogen.
So in addition to the internet business that you do, you also have a storefront in Houston, correct? Where people can just come in and buy, or no?
People can walk in and buy. It's not much of a storefront, more of a warehouse where you can get cookies.
This is the back cave in the back.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned the pandemic earlier. Besides some of the supply chain issues, overall, what impact did it have on you? Was it a bonus because now more people are maybe doing internet shopping, or was that completely wiped out by some of the supply chain issues?
I think it was a little bit of both. So we saw a boom initially because more people were health conscious.
Shopping online.
Yeah, and they were shopping online, and so we just happened to be on Amazon, and like our website had just like really started picking up steam when the pandemic like shut down the United States. So people are already looking for better items because they want to stay healthy, and they want to potentially like prevent themselves from getting sick by eating better. And lo and behold, we were the better for you cookie. Then towards the end of that first pandemic year, I think things got really complicated because people stopped buying as much. I think it was a combination of like the economy, and maybe people just got fed up with eating clean and they wanted to binge on some holiday treats, But yeah, it was both. It helped us grow, and then we definitely felt the pains of supply issues?
We were, I mean, at the beginning of the pandemic, it was pretty much just like me and Jose still. So I like to think like during recessions and big like economic downturns, being small is an advantage because you can change very quickly. You don't have a lot of overhead. We weren't really paying ourselves, right? So we could have kept going. And then meanwhile, your competition, who is probably much larger and they do have all that overhead and they're much slower, they're probably going to go under. And then it kind of levels the playing field, right? So I think in a way it worked for us, like from a business perspective, but now, like Jose was saying, like we're kind of at a size where it's not just us. We have 10 employees. We're paying rent on this building. It's definitely a struggle when the economy kind of shifts around. Like it's harder for us to survive and thrive. But the timing was great then. Unfortunately, it's like it just seems like we keep jumping from like one crisis to another. But at least we're not like I'm $100 million or $1 billion company because
Oh,
yeah, dang. It's probably harder for them in some ways.
So one of the things that I find as I review products from you and from other people will respond in the comments, "Oh, too expensive. How can this company think they can charge, $6 for a little bag of cookies or something like that?"
Yeah.
What is your response to that comment?
I think
you talked about the cost of almond flour and allulose, but
Yeah.
what all goes into making a cookie that maybe people aren't thinking about when they make those sort of comments?
I think there's two kinds of responses. There's the like more immediate response. It's like, well, why don't you go buy all these ingredients and you make the products yourself?
Yeah.
And then you'll quickly realize that it's extremely expensive and
Time
consuming. So you're going to spend 2 or 3 times as much doing it yourself. So we actually are saving you money if you wanted to make a product like this. But the more appropriate response is, it's not really fair to compare our cookie to a sugar cookie because it's not apples to apples, right? It's almost like they take the same form, but the ingredients are so different. There's so many different like health implications. Like eating 3 Oreos will, that's what, like maybe 10 grams of sugar. You can eat one of our cookies and get less than 1 gram. So it's about prioritizing health and building it into your budget versus, the $5 coffees you're buying that are loaded with sugar and going out and buying like cheap desserts that are, well, tasty, not the best for you. So I think it's just something that people have to budget around if it matters that much to you, especially like if you're like me and you need to keep your blood sugar down.
Yeah.
It's something to view as almost a necessity versus like a must have or a want to have treat.
I think the way I like to describe it is, do you want to pay for food or do you want to pay for medicine?
Yeah, because it's a long-term investment.
Sooner or later, you're going to be paying for both. So make up your mind which one you'd prefer to pay for.
Yep. One thing too, I think maybe you can blame Amazon for this, but when it comes to online products, I don't think people fully comprehend or grasp like what it actually costs to physically move something from like one part of the country to your front door. Shipping is just wildly expensive. And when you buy stuff on Amazon Prime, it gets like lumped into the price and you just kind of feels free. But just for example, if we sell like 6 cookies and we ship that like first class mail, that could easily be $10 of shipping. So, that's like $1.50 a cookie and shipping costs. So that's half of the price right there. And I guess it's just a part of the convenience factor. We, another, I guess, way we try to make our products more accessible to people is that shipping problem goes away or it's lessened if you can increase the average order value, right? So it costs us about the same to ship 6 cookies as it does to ship like 60 cookies. So if you order our bigger bundles, that's where we offer like kind of discounts and that's sort of where it can start to make more economic sense. But I mean, there's so much goes into the price of the product too. It's not just ingredients. But I mean, we have a team of 5 bakers, and we have to pay them like a living wage, right? Like enough where they can pay rent. We have equipment, overhead, packaging, marketing. It's just a lot goes into each of those cookies. Our goal as we grow, it's all about efficiency, right? It's like the more efficiently we can make the cookies, then the lower our unit cost, which means we can offer it at a more like competitive price down the road. And that's how the big conglomerates get away with it, because they're not making 1,000 cookies a day. They're making 10 million cookies a day, and they're spreading those costs across all of them. We're just a small business, so it's going to be like 20 years before we can get to that level.
But that being said, we were just at Whole Foods earlier, and we were looking at some like competitor bags, and the way that they kind of do it is they offer a lot less product for a seemingly similar price. So for instance, if you buy one of our pouches of Keto Bites at a store, it'll run you like $9.99. That's 6 ounces. And that pouch will look strangely similar to the competitor's pouch that has 2 or 3 ounces in it for $5.99. And so at a glance, you're like, oh, wow, this company's way better. It's $5.99. It's like, yeah, but you're getting less than half of the same product. And the quality is probably going to be different too. I would venture to say ours is probably in the upper echelons of quality. And per ounce, we make the most sense as well. So it's kind of frustrating sometimes.
So have you started selling in stores in the Houston area or beyond?
We have, yeah. We're actually in over
200 or so.
Well, yeah. At this point, it's like over 300 specialty stores kind of throughout the nation. Like it varies. Like cafes, we're in coffee shops, we're in specialty stores, we're in like gas stops, like premium truck stops, we're in some gift shops. And then like the biggest of which is going to be Central Market, which is a premium like specialty store in Texas.
And Hy-Vee,
Hy-Vee's,
Midwest,
Yolks in the Northwest. Yeah.
It really, for food companies, there's this giant like wall called distribution, where you like Jose and I can't just walk up to Kroger and be like, hey, like sell our cookies in your local store. They're like, no, you have to go through this monster distributor company, where the distributor buys the product from Chipmonk, and then they would distribute it to like a Kroger. And of course, those distributors, like they don't really care about the small companies because they can't, there's no huge money potential there. So for us, it's like we have to just really be scrappy and grow and get enough attention at some point where they might be interested. And that really just comes down to like tons of phone calls and emails to every independently owned mom and pop, like any place that might be selling cookies, where we can talk to the owner and they have the ability to buy like a case on the phone. That's like almost all of those accounts that Jose mentioned, that it's literally been like one account at a time. And you just have to do that until you hit sort of that critical mass and could start getting into bigger chains. It's a lot of work, but it's also, you're way closer to the end consumer and the end product too. We're not just shipping it to some random distributor and then it's going places we don't know. We know all of our accounts very well. And it's funny because we'll talk to customers and they'll tell us like where they found us originally. We're like, oh yeah, like we know that place. Cool.
It's funny because I don't think a lot of people understand how much work goes into getting their food off the shelf. So if you as a producer make the product, you have to then get it to the stores. And the only way to get it to the stores and make their life easy is by going through a middleman, because as a store, it's much easier to work with like 5 middlemen than it is to work with 500 or 1,000 individual vendors. And so they leave that work to the middleman, and the middleman will then charge us a percentage to take our product, hold it in their warehouses, and then distribute to the stores. The stores then want their cut, right? So then the product gets marked up again for them to make what they need to make to keep the doors open. And so by the end of it, like the consumer ends up paying something that's not even remotely close to what we sold it for.
Yeah.
But that's just the way it works. A lot of hands have to touch the product before it gets into your grocery basket.
So Jose, earlier on when we were talking about hitting the point where now you've got more versatility in terms of flavors and even sort of the delivery mechanism. Is it a cookie or is it something else? I don't know. First off, if this turns out to be a secret, like you only sent it to me and only I know about it, we can always edit this out. But the carrot cake sandwiches, or did those get widely distributed, or were they a specialty VIP item?
That was only for our e-commerce audience. When we first started, actually, we were going to farmers markets and we would do little carrot cake whoopie pies, and we did like red velvet whoopie pies and lemon whoopie pies, and those just outsold the cookies. People were in love with those. Yeah. So we would batch them together. We're like, well, if you want these whoopie pies, you have to buy these cookies too. And people still bought them. They flew. Our only concern was that at the time our icing was cream cheese. So it's very dairy based. Long shelf life is non-existent there unless it's refrigerated. So we moved away from that. But because we had the recipe, we were like, let's try to bring it back. Let's see if people want to try this. And to date, that's probably been one of our most popular successful small batches. So that's definitely something we keep in our back pocket. So we'll bring it back periodically.
Yeah, well, the moment that you guys do the carrot cake whoopie pies again, put me at the top of the list. Those were so good. That's the one I wouldn't even share with my grandson. That's how much I liked them.
That's funny.
Are there any other things sort of on the horizon in terms of diversification of what you're baking that you can share with my audience?
I mean, we've got that's what I love about our small batch. Like the 2 times a month gives us a lot of opportunity to try new stuff. So pretty much any like baked good you can think of, we have it on our list somewhere. We've got some really tasty low carb protein brownies in the room next door that we've been eating all day. So could see that coming.
Yeah,
muffins.
We've done donuts.
Oh yeah, donuts.
What about non-moist stuff? Crackers, for example, or pretzel bites or something like that. Have you looked into that at all?
We would have to change sweeteners if we wanted to sweeten them
allulose.
At all. Yeah, allulose is just too much of a humectant. It attracts like too much water.
Yeah.
So we would have to switch over to either a different sweetener or just not sweeten them all together. So a cracker would be a viable option. The only downside about crackers is that we have no experience making them. So like we would be starting from scratch. Not that it would be like impossible. It's just, another challenge to add on top of our already very complex like baking schedule.
Yeah, we try to when we launch like a new product, we try to keep like 90% of the ingredients and 90% of the process the same as what we're already doing. I think a lot of small food companies can fall into the trap of like wanting to do everything at the very beginning. And so you never get very good at any one thing. And then so you're kind of expending all your resources on 10 pretty good things versus focusing all your energy on just one amazing thing. And then, naturally expanding from there. So we try to be cautious about it, but we also recognize that like people love variety, they love new things. There's so much stuff in the kind of low carb, sugar-free space that hasn't really even been attempted yet. That we want to keep doing that, but sort of just putting our toes into the water with the small batch program. And then as we come across things that really resonate, like the carrot cake sandwiches, then taking a closer look and figuring out how could we take that beyond small batch and do it.
As far as that, my wife is headed off to work, so I had to give her that. Go ahead. I'm gonna go way off topic here, just for a moment. David, do you watch The Boys on Amazon Prime?
Yeah.
So Huey.
Yeah.
You ever get mistaken for him?
Is this a doppelganger?
Yes.
That's funny.
I don't think we've heard that one yet.
I haven't heard Huey before. Who's the other guy?
The Bill Hader.
Bill Hader, I get a lot.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I can see that. Yeah, we just finished Barry season 3.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you don't have quite the crazed look about you that Bill Hader does.
Crazy eyes.
Yeah, definitely. Whenever I see you on LinkedIn, I think of Huey from The Boys. So also, I noticed we're wearing the same shirt here, you and I. So I got my Chipmonk shirt on as well. I'm glad you guys sent me a medium. Kind of shows off the guns there.
Hey, looking jacked.
Yeah, working on it. So, is there anything else that you'd like to share with the people that are watching? Things that you might want them to know about Chipmonk or your mission before we kind of wrap things up?
I think I have two quick things. So the name Chipmonk, there's a funny story behind that. So we were actually driving to Austin one weekend, and we were trying to come up with a name. We're like, what can we call ourselves? And we're like, what about animals that like nuts? And we were like, squirrels, elephants. And then we drove by this giant squirrel sculpture, and we were like, what about a chipmunk? And then we were like, but with an O, because we use monk fruit. And so that was the initial pun, right? Like, squirrels are nut loving animals. We use monk fruit. And then if you take one step back, monks are very they're representative of mindfulness and awareness, consciousness. And that's really the name of the game. Just be more aware and more conscious of the kind of foods and ingredients you're putting into your body. So that's kind of the overarching mission behind Chipmonk, just trying to help people be more aware about ingredients and eat better food. And then second, with all these the small batch talk, the only way that you really have access to the small batches is to join our email or text list, because they fly off the shelf. By the time we're done with our email list and our text subscribers, there's 5 left for the general audience. So if you want first dibs, you have to sign up and join our little Chipmonk community.
I've learned that the hard way. I missed out on the baklava bites, and there was at least one other one where I'm like, oh, David, why did you not save some for me?
I always make a note to send Steve, a couple of the small batch, but sometimes they sell so fast. I'm like, I don't know. I might want to keep these for the sales.
Honestly, sometimes I want to keep some for myself, and then
we're
sold out. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess that's nice.
So before we wrap things up, and if the answer is no, I can delete that off the once I get into the video editor. How would you guys feel about doing a little giveaway?
Yeah, we're always down for a giveaway. Sure.
All right. What if we'll do this? Oh, first off, where are you limited in shipping, like Canada or US or
domestic? Just anywhere in the United States, U.S. territories, Army bases work, but not international, unfortunately.
Okay, so no Canada, no Sri Lanka, just
definitely
unless there's a military base there.
Yeah.
All right, how would you feel about if I were to draw 3 winners from the comments? So now I'm talking to you, my viewers. Leave a comment down below. You do need to be in the U.S. or military base. And I will, 1 week from today, draw 3 of you, and I'll reach out to you, and we'll get you some cookies. We can probably let them pick their flavor.
Yeah, sure. Right? That's easy.
Let's go crazy.
All right.
Might have a small batch, available. Who knows?
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see when this video actually releases. I'm thinking, let me just pop up my calendar here. This could, July 4th. That would be my normal release date. Who knows? Maybe we'll bump this up to the 27th. It'll either be the 27th or the 5th, I think. So I don't know what you've got in the hopper for small batch right now.
We've got a good one, a really good one for July 4th. So
okay, well, maybe we'll make that the special giveaway then, so people can not only win something but win something special.
Yeah. We'll set
all right, gentlemen. As I said before we made the cameras start to roll, we were going to shoot for 30 minutes, but I knew we'd go over, and we did by about 20 minutes. But it was great talking to you. I hope the audience enjoys it as much as I did.
Thanks so much, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
We loved it.
Thanks. Keto on.